welcome to the deep dive. You've brought us a really fascinating and, frankly, pretty intense stack of sources today. We're looking into a body of research that connects one of the most visible celestial events of the late 20th century Comet Hale-Bopp to some extremely precise biblical end times prophecy.
That's right. Our job today really is to synthesize this research. It proposes that Hale-Bopp, which was discovered back in 1995, actually acted as a kind of false Christ star.
A false Christ star.
Yeah. The core argument is that this comet signaled the birth of the figure known in prophecy as the Antichrist, or sometimes the son of perdition. For you listening, this deep dive is going to require us to track some incredibly complex correlations. We're talking about specific astronomical markers, ancient religious feasts, and some really detailed numerology.
And the research is definitely specific. I mean, it uses astronomical data to argue for a potential birth date of July 23, 1995, and then it projects this tight timeline for the start of the biblical tribulation period, forecasting it somewhere between, fall 2026 and fall 2033. This isn't just, casual stargazing. This is intricate math applied to the heavens. Okay, let's try and unpack this. To start, maybe let's anchor ourselves in the specific cosmic events the research relies on. It seems like it all hinges on the paths of two key comets, Hale-Bopp and its predecessor, Comet Hyakutake.
That's it. And how they align with a particular feature in the night sky. Hale-Bopp itself, as you said, was first spotted on July 23, 1995. But what's absolutely crucial for the sources theory is the location of this alignment.
Right.
It's situated within the constellation Perseus. And this constellation contains a deeply ancient and often kind of dark motif known as the evil Eye of Medusa.
Okay.
This is what the source material keeps calling the head of Satan. And the focus right there is the variable star Algol, which sits at the center of that eye.
Tell us more about Algol, because the source puts incredible weight on just that single star.
It really does. So Algol is actually a triple star system. Its name in Arabic translates roughly to the ghoul or demon star.
You're right, I've heard that.
But the research focuses on the Hebrew connection. The source notes that Algol is called Ha-Satan in Hebrew.
Ha-Satan.
Meaning the adversary. So the authors are really setting the stage here, claiming these comets are crossing a specific celestial point explicitly named the adversary, or the head of Satan.
Okay, now we get to the precision, which I think makes the argument so compelling, at least within the source material. The authors highlight two specific anniversary dates tied to this evil eye location, exactly 1 year apart.
That's right. So the first marker was April 11th, 1996. That's when Comet Hyakutake crossed near Algol. And the source is very specific that this date was 7 days after the start of Passover that year.
7 days after Passover 96. And then exactly 365 days later, April 11th, 1997. Comet Hale-Bopp crossed the exact same spot.
The exact same spot. And the visual conclusion the authors draw from this is, well, it's striking. They say the paths taken by Hale-Bopp and Hyakutake formed what they call a perfect cross mark directly across this location known as the head of Satan.
A perfect cross.
They argued this just cannot be an astronomical coincidence. It has to be, in their view, a deliberate celestial sign marking that specific time and place.
Wow. Okay, but wait. There's more tied to that exact date, April 11, 1997, right? The same day these comet paths supposedly finished forming this cross, something else happened.
Yes, the source points to a major event on Earth. On April 11, 1997, the cathedral housing the Shroud of Turin caught fire.
The Shroud of Turin. Is the source implying, divine intervention there, or just linking simultaneous chaos to reinforce the sign? What's the angle?
They seem to position it more as a sign of chaos, yeah. A deliberate sort of multidimensional marker. And they pile on other coincidences tied to this timeline, too.
Like what?
Well, for instance, that Hale-Bopp crossing on April 11, 97. It occurred exactly 1,000 days after Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 started impacting Jupiter back in July 1994.
Shoemaker-Levy 9, right, the big one.
Yeah, and that impact itself lasted 7 days. So for the authors, all these things happening around the same time just reinforces the idea that this 1995-1997 period was a major prophetic turning point. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit now from the celestial clock, you could say, to the human timeline this figure is supposed to follow. The entire theory seems to hinge on a very specific correlation. The idea that the Antichrist's public debut is tied to the highly significant prophetic age of 30.
Yeah, this is important context for you listening. Why age 30? What's the significance there?
Well, according to this research, age 30 is kind of the established pattern for the start of major public roles for key historical and biblical figures. They cite Jesus beginning his ministry, of course, but also other figures they consider prototypes, maybe, like Nimrod, Joseph in Egypt, King David, Alexander the Great, even the Roman Emperor Titus. The claim is they all began significant public phases around age 30.
Okay, so if we accept that premise, age 30 being the debut, the numbers seem to work out with, well, almost unnerving precision in this research. If we take the comet's discovery date, July 23, 1995, and project forward to July 23, 2025, that's exactly 30 years.
Exactly 30 years. The source material is very precise, 10,958 days, or 360 months. So this calculation suggests that the figure signaled by the comet would turn 30 in the summer of 2025,
Right.
and then begin their path to power, leading into the tribulation period starting, they predict, around fall 2026.
I have to admit, the astronomical precision is jarring. But how does the research pivot from that celestial math, which gives us the date of conception or signaling, to predicting the highly specific circumstances of this individual's physical birth? That seems like a big leap.
It is a big leap, and that's where the source makes, well, arguably its largest claim. If the signaling event or conception as they frame it was July 23, 1995, then the actual physical birth would have occurred roughly 9 months later, so around Passover of 1996.
Okay, Passover 96.
But to land precisely on April 11th, 1996, which, remember, is the date Hyakutake crossed the head of Satan.
The first cross point.
Yes. To hit that date exactly, the gestation period would have to be precisely 263 days.
263 days. And that number, 263, is what unlocks this sort of modern conspiracy element of the theory, isn't it?
It really does. The authors contend that 263 days isn't an average natural gestation period.
Right.
Instead, they point out, and this is key, that 263 days is the specific number used in in vitro fertilization, IVF, to calculate the due date after an embryo transfer date.
Whoa. Okay, so the source is actually arguing that the precision needed to align the birth date with the astronomical crossmark implies
Yeah.
that the Antichrist wasn't naturally conceived, but was conceived through genetic manipulation.
Precisely. That's the conjecture put forward. It's shocking, really. They basically state that the Antichrist was conceived via genetic manipulation or hybridization in a clandestine military underground black op lab.
A black op lab, wow.
And that precise 263-day calculation, in their view, is kind of the smoking gun pointing to an assisted or engineered conception.
And this engineered origin then leads directly to how they hypothesize the nature of this figure, right? The research suggests the seed of Satan would have a dual nature, potentially possessing a Nephilim bloodline. Maybe we should pause just a second there for listeners who might not know that term.
Good idea. Yeah, the term Nephilim comes from the book of Genesis. Generally, it's interpreted as the offspring of fallen angels and human women, often linked to giants or, those with corrupted bloodlines in biblical lore.
Okay.
So in this research, the Nephilim connection implies a non-purely human origin, something else.
And the source then goes even further, claiming this figure would have a third DNA strand type of human composition, which is quite something. And this dual composition is explicitly linked to mirroring the theological concept of the hypostatic union.
That's right. The hypostatic union is, it's a highly specific Christian theological term. It's used to describe the nature of Jesus, the belief that he was both fully God and fully man.
Two natures in one person.
Exactly. So the source argues that the Antichrist, as a kind of counterfeit Christ, would also present this dual nature. But in this case, it's one that combines human nature with demonic or hybrid nature, preparing him, supposedly, for a role that deceives mankind on a grand scale.
Okay, so that's the nature of the individual. Let's pivot now to the system they're supposedly designed to rule. The symbolic origin of the comet itself becomes significant again here. Hale-Bopp was discovered in the constellation of Sagittarius.
Sagittarius, the archer.
Right.
And Sagittarius is linked in this prophetic research to the occult motif for the Antichrist. Specifically, they correlate it with the first seal judgment described in the book of Revelation, the figure riding the white horse carrying a bow. So this sets the stage for a figure of conquest emerging symbolically from Sagittarius.
And the authors connect this ancient prophecy directly to, well, very contemporary global initiatives. They seem to frame the global push toward transhumanism, transforming mankind through technology and genetics, as the ultimate fulfillment of the system that would prepare the world for this Antichrist's reign.
Yeah, this is where the source transitions into its, let's say, highly controversial claims about current events. The research contends that initiatives like the COVID pandemic were actually used as a test run.
A test run for what?
For global tracking mechanisms, designed, they argue, to acclimate the population to pervasive surveillance and control.
Okay, we absolutely must be impartial here and state clearly for everyone listening. These are the claims and contentions of the source material we're analyzing, linking them to their interpretation of the prophetic timeline. We're reporting on the source, not endorsing it.
Absolutely. That's crucial.
So with that disclaimer, what specific mechanism of tracking is claimed by these authors?
The specific mechanism they claim involves the use of mRNA injections containing graphene oxide. The authors argue that these components act as nanobots, and that these can be programmed using external signals like radio frequencies, light, or sound to self-assemble inside the body.
Self-assemble into what?
Into a microchip implant.
Right. And the idea being that once this implant is assembled, it would facilitate the function of the beast system, allowing it to track everything about a person.
That's the claim. Location, medical history, bank account access, purchasing history, everything. It's presented as the ultimate merger of the biological and the technological for total control.
According to this research?
According to this research, yes. That synthesis from the hybrid birth, the Nephilim connection, all the way to this global tracking mechanism, that's really the core argument of the source material. It presents a very comprehensive, interlocking system.
So just to quickly summarize the comet's whole journey, as described by the authors.
Yeah.
It starts its appearance and discovery in Sagittarius the Archer.
Right.
Then it moves through the Northern Cross, or Cygnus, then reaches its symbolic climax and maximum visibility in Perseus, where it makes that cross mark over Algol, the head of Satan.
Correct.
And from there, it apparently settles into what the source describes as an infinite spiral way down in the southern sky, visible from the constellation Octon.
Bringing the timeline full circle, the source maintains that the Antichrist's public revelation, his big debut, is prophesied to occur after a preceding event the authors identify as the rapture.
Okay.
They quote 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8 and 9, stating, "The one who now restrains it will continue until he is taken out of the way." And based on their 30-year debut calculation from the 1995 sign.
Right, landing in 2025.
The 7-year tribulation period is forecast to run precisely from fall 2026 to fall 2033.
Fall 2026 to fall 2033. So what does this entire deep dive tell us then about the significance of Comet Hale-Bopp, according to this perspective? The source firmly proposes that this celestial visitor wasn't just spectacular, it was the modern sign marking this very specific prophetic timing and birth. But interestingly, this idea of Hale-Bopp being a major marker isn't actually limited just to this specific Antichrist theory, is it?
That's a great point. No, it isn't. The research itself notes that rabbinical Jews, completely independent of this Antichrist theory, also interpreted the appearance of the comet.
And what do they take it to mean?
They apparently interpreted it to mean the start of the days of Noah, signaling a kind of global turning point and possibly chaos on Earth.
The days of Noah. This link is where the whole narrative kind of finds a compelling symmetry, doesn't it?
It really does. Because the source notes that NASA calculated Hale-Bopp's previous appearance.
When was that?
Around 2215 BC. Which, of course, for these authors, strongly reinforces the link back to the original days of Noah. You know, the time leading up to the flood and the building of the Ark of Escape.
Wow, okay. That brings it all together in a really potent way, at least thematically.
It certainly creates a powerful narrative loop. So, maybe a final thought for you listening. What stands out to you about this recurring pattern? This use of major astronomical events across different religious and prophetic traditions, all seeming to mark these massive historical turning points or signal future upheaval. It's a persistent theme, isn't it?